Anyone can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person at the right time for the right purpose in the right way, that is not within everyone's power, and that is not easy. Aristotle. Where does anger come from? Perhaps you can identify with Brookie. Brookie, the mother of two preschoolers, loved her husband Glenn and an upcoming attorney. The couple had been married for 8 years. Brookie was a certified public accountant, but had chosen to put her career on hold until her children started school. I think I made a mistake, she told me. I don't think I am cut out to be a mother. I always wanted children, but now that I've got them, I don't like the way I treat them, and I don't like the way they treat me. I don't ever remember being angry or losing my temper before I had children. I always considered myself to be in control of my emotions. But I have to admit, I often lost my lost it with my kids, and I hate myself for that. What do you do when you lose it with the children? I inquired. Differently, different things, she said. Sometimes I yell at them, sometimes I spank them really hard. The other day I picked up Ginger and shook her. That really scared me. I had seen on television just the other day a report of a mother who actually killed her child by shaking her. I don't want to hurt my children. I love them, but I lose control. I wish Glenn would keep the kids and give me a break, but he is so stressed in his job that he says he doesn't feel like caring for them. I think maybe I should go back to work and let someone else take care of the children. As I talked further with Brookie, I discovered that she was angry not only with her children's behavior, but also with Glenn for giving her so little help. She was angry at herself for choosing to be a full-time mom, and ultimately she was angry with God for allowing her to be a mother. How should have he should have known that I wouldn't be able to handle it, she said. By now Brookie was crying, to be honest. I felt like crying too as I remember the hundreds of mothers who passed through my office over the years, feeling guilty, feeling alone, not liking their kids or themselves very much. Then there was Rich, who came to my office well dressed, and I noticed his right foot was shoeless. Shoeless. I soon found out why. I've got to get help, he began. I've known for a long time that my anger was getting out of control, but Saturday was the last straw. For 15 minutes I tried to get my lawnmower started. I checked the gas, I checked the oil, I put the spark plug in it and still wouldn't start. Finally, I was so exasperated, I stepped back and kicked the thing. I broke my two toes and cut the third. Sitting in steps in pain, I said to myself, that was really stupid. I'm embarrassed and I can't tell people what really happened. So I've been saying I had an accident with a lawnmower. This is the first time I've lost my temper, he continued. I've said some pretty nasty things to my wife and children in the past. I don't think I've ever physically abused them, but I've come close. In the course of our conversation, I discovered that Rich was highly educated, holding a master's in business administration degree. He was married with two children, profitably employed, and owned a house in suburbia. Rich was an active member of his church and respected in the community, yet he has a habit of blowing his cool. Thousands of men can readily identify with Rich. Unfortunately, many of them are not honest as he, and few of them are willing to reach out for help. Rich was with his broken toes and Brookie with a broken heart dealing with very different challenges. However, they hold on to the common human experience of intense anger and an inability to handle it. Both knew that their anger had led them to inappropriate behavior, but neither had knew what to do about it. Thus, they suffered physically and emotionally from their destructive responses to anger. And their loved ones suffered too. Anger is the opposite of feeling of love. Love draws you towards the person. Anger sets you against the person. What happens when we get angry? People of all age and social status experience anger. Brian, a high school student, is angry at the teacher who gave him a D on his report card. Liz, Brian's teacher, is angry with her ex for failing to send the child support checks on time. Maria, an 85-year-old grandmother, is angry with her oldest son, who seldom comes to see her. Alex is angry in general because he can't find a job and feels rejected by society. Marvin, a pastor, is angry with the church leadership who always shut down his best ideas. Bethany is only 3 years old, but she is angry with her mother who took away her favorite toy. But what do you mean by anger? The dictionary describes anger as a strong passion or emotion of displeasure and usually antagonism, excited by a sense of injury or insult. Although we normally think of anger as an emotion, it is in reality a cluster of emotions evolving in the body, mind, and will. And we don't sit down and say, I think I will not experience anger. Anger is a response to some event or situation in life that causes irritation, frustration, or pain, or other displeasure. Thousands of events or situations have the potential for provoking anger. An elderly relative makes a tactless comment about your child's weight. The guy behind you on the expressway follows you too closely. A friend is always posting political rants on Facebook. Your father is always angry about something when you were growing up and you have trouble managing your own anger. Anger is fed by feelings of disappointment, hurt, rejection, and embarrassment. Anger pits you against the person, place, or thing that sparked the emotion. It is the opposite of feeling of love. Love draws you towards the person. Anger sets you against the person. But the mind is also active from the very beginning. For example, if Becky asks her husband Tim to mow the lawn while she takes the kids shopping, and she comes home hours later and the grass is still shaggy, she may think, if he cared, he would mow the lawn. He knows how much it means to me. I don't ask for much. What was he doing instead? What did he want to do? How selfish. But Tim's response, look at everything else I've been doing. I sealed the deck, took out the garbage, walked the dog. What does she want? Meanwhile, Ken sits simmering in his department store room while Corey, his manager, tells him his numbers are down this quarter. If he doesn't start producing, the company might have to let him go. It's because I'm over 50, Ken thinks. They're trying to get rid of all the old guys. Corey's about 55. What does he know? Corey's about 35. What does he know? Becky, Tim, and Ken are all experiencing strong negative emotions in their mind. But there's more. The body also gets an experience of anger. The body's automatic nervous system gets the adrenaline flowing. Depending on the level of anger, any or all of the type may happen physically. Adrenal glands release two hormones, adrenaline and noradrenaline. These two chemicals seem to give people arousal, the senses excitement, the heat of anger, and in turn the hormones affect the heart rate, blood pressure, lung functions, and digestive activity. So as Ken sits in the conference room listening to the boss, he can feel his face fluttering, stomach clenching, and his fist clenching as the physiological changes give people the feeling of being overwhelmed by anger and being unable to control it. Then anger spills over into action. Brookie shakes her preschooler kid. Bethany throws a tantrum. Rich kicks the lawnmower, and Ken returns to his cubicle and starts to compose a furious email. We can't control our bodily reactions, however, we can control our mental and physical responses to anger. We'll look at that in upcoming chapters. What is anger? But first, let's look again at the roots of anger and where does it come from and why do we experience it. I believe that the human capacity for anger is rooted in the nature of God. Please do not think I am being disrespectful for God. On the contrary, I stand for deep reverence in God when I suggest that human anger is rooted in His divine nature. Further, I suggest that anger is an essential part of the nature of God. I am suggesting that anger derives two aspects of God's divine nature: His holiness and love. Scriptures proclaim God is holy. For example, 1 Peter 1 verse 16, Leviticus 11 verse 14, 44, 45. Leviticus 11, 44, 45. The word holy means set apart from sin. Whenever we are talking about God the Father, God the Son, or the Spirit, there is no sin in the nature of God. The New Testament writer said that Jesus, He has faced all the time testings as we do, He did not sin. The second fundamental character and nature of God is love. The Apostle John summarized in the whole Scripture was simply, God is love, 1 John 4, verse 8. Love is not to be equated with God, but rather in its essential nature of God is loving. This is not simply the New Testament concept of God from the beginning to the end. The Scriptures reveal God is committed to the well-being of His creatures. It is God's nature to love. It is from these two divine characteristics that God's anger is derived. Please note, Scriptures never say God is anger. The statement is not the fact true. Anger is a part of the essential nature of God. However, the Bible indicates that God experiences anger. The word anger is found 455 times in the Old Testament and 375 times refers to God's anger. In fact, the psalmist said, God is angry with the wicked every day. Psalms 7 verse 11. God's anger was not limited to the Old Testament times. Read the life of Jesus and you'll see numerous occasions where Jesus demonstrated anger. Because God is holy, because God is love, and necessarily experiences anger, His love seeks the good of His creatures. His holiness stands forever against sin. All of God's moral laws are based on His holiness and His love, that they are always aligned with what is right and that they are for the good of His creatures. God desires for His humans to do right and enjoy the benefits. He said to ancient Israel, now listen, today I've given you a choice between life and death, between prosperity and disaster. For I command you this day to love the Lord and keep His commandments, decrees, and regulations, walking His ways. If you do this, you will live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land when you are about to enter and occupy. Deuteronomy 30, verse 15 and 16. Knowing the terminal effects of man's sins, God's anger is kindled. It is God's concern for justice, righteousness, both of which grow out of His holiness and love. That stirred God's anger. This was when God sees evil. Anger is a logical response to the injustice and unrighteousness. So what does all this have to do with human anger? The scriptures say that we are made in the image of God, Genesis 1 verse 27. The image was marred by the fall, was not erased. People still bear the imprint of God's image deep within their souls. Thus, we are fallen. We still have some concern for justice and righteousness. Found the most unrighteous man will not follow him for a week. He will not make him mistakes. Listen to the young child who is beginning to put words into sentences. You will soon hear the child say, "That is not fair, Mommy." Where did the child obtain moral judgment? I suggest that it's stamped deep within the nature, tampered in the parental teaching. To be sure, the child knows when he or she is wronged and expresses it freely. Anger is the emotion that arises whenever we encounter or we perceive to be wrong. Emotional, psychological, and cognitive dimensions of anger leap in the front burner of experience when we encounter injustice. Why does a wife experience anger towards her husband? Because in her mind, she is disappointed, embarrassed, humiliated, or rejected. In short, he has done her wrong. Why do teenagers experience wrong towards their parents? Because the teenager perceives that the parents have been unfair, unloving, and unkind, that parents have done wrong. Why does the man kick the lawnmower? Because the lawnmower is not working right. The machine manufacturer has done him wrong. Why do drivers honk horns at the traffic light turns green? Because the reason is the person in front of them should be paying attention to the light and not texting, and should have been accelerated seconds earlier. Try to remember the last time you experienced anger and ask the question, why did I get angry? Chances are the answer will mention some injustice. Someone or something did not treat you fairly. Something went wrong. Your anger may have been directed toward a person, object, situation, yourself, or God. And at every instant, someone or something is telling you you have been treated wrongly. Why we are not discussing whether your perception is wrong or valid or invalid. We will deal with that at a later chapter. What we are establishing is that anger originates from the perception that something is wrong and that this is a sense of morality. Some of the things that are right and wrong, some of the things that are wrong, finds root in the fact that we are created in the image of God. His holy established moral law is concerned for his creatures. Anger is not evil. Anger is a part of our fall. Anger is not a part of our fallen nature. Anger is not Satan at work in our lives. Quite contrary, anger is evidence that we are made in God's image and demonstrates that we have common concern for justice and righteousness in spite of our fallen state. The capacity for anger is strong evidence that we are more than mere animals. It reveals a concern for righteousness, justice, and fairness. The experience of anger is evidence of our nobility, not our depravity. We should thank God for the capacity to experience anger. When one ceases to experience anger, one has lost a sense of moral concern. Without moral concern, the world would be a dreadful place. Indeed, that brings us to our second major question. What is the purpose of anger? More important, what is God's purpose for human anger? The scriptures never say God is anger.